The jungle was too quiet for a war zone. Trees that once echoed with alien birdsong now stood as silent witnesses to the carnage below. Smoke curled from shattered dropships buried in mud. Nothing moved except for a single human private Cade. Mercer, his boots sinking into the wet soil with each step. His rifle was low, but his eyes stayed sharp. He wasn't sure who the enemy was anymore, only that both sides had stopped firing after last night's blast wave tore through the sector. Cade's unit was gone. Some vaporized, some simply missing. He was supposed to regroup at Rally Point Echo, but instead found himself surrounded by wreckage and dead tech. His comms were dead. The beacon was silent. The only thing guiding him now was instinct and the strange pull in his gut telling him not to turn back. He moved deeper into the forest, past a crashed alien skimmer half buried in moss. That's when he heard it. A low hum. Almost like singing, but broken and mechanical. It wasn't coming from his suit. It was nearby. Organic. He crouched and followed the sound until he reached a narrow glade, the light slanting down like golden threads. And there, against the trunk of a glowing tree, lay her. She was barely breathing. Purple skin, faintly glowing. In the dark, armor cracked. A strange device clutched weakly in her hand. Her eyes fluttered open as Cade approached. Bright violet, locked onto him with fear and confusion. She tried to speak, but only a garbled language came out. He dropped his rifle and raised his hand slowly. He wasn't here to hurt her. She didn't run. Instead, she slumped back. Cade checked her wounds. Burn marks, plasma scorched. He recognized the pattern. It wasn't from human weapons. Someone else had done this. She wasn't the enemy. She was running from one. And whoever it was, they might still be close. Cade pulled out his field kit and began treating her injuries. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes didn't leave his face. She pointed weakly to the device in her hand. A small cube with pulsating edges and a central slot. It wasn't any tech he recognized. But it looked important, sacred even. She pressed it into his hand before she passed out again. He stared at the cube. It hummed softly in his palm, like it was scanning him. Then it clicked. A section popped open, revealing a thin metallic card. It glowed faintly and bore alien inscriptions. Before he could examine it further, a sound cracked through the jungle. Branches snapping, movement, heavy, fast. He lifted the unconscious girl onto his back and ran. Whatever was coming wasn't friendly. He didn't know what the card was, but someone definitely didn't want a human to have it. And right now, that meant he had to survive long enough to figure out why this strange alien girl had trusted him with it. Behind him, shadows moved in the trees. Four-legged beasts with armor-plated skin and glowing eyes tracked his scent. The forest had turned from mystery to hunting ground. Cade tightened his grip around the girl and pushed forward. She had given him something powerful. Now he had to earn it. Cade's lungs burned as he charged through the thick underbrush. The alien girl slung across his shoulders like a sack of light armor and fractured breath. Her skin was growing colder, and her chest rose and fell with the rhythm of something fragile. The jungle around him hissed with unseen life, but louder than that was the sound of something crashing through the foliage behind him. Whatever was chasing them wasn't slow. It moved like a predator, but with purpose. Not wild, trained, controlled. Cade ducked beneath low branches and stumbled across uneven roots, guided by instinct and the girl's faint pulse against his neck. His boots skidded across wet stone. As he reached the edge of a narrow ravine, no bridge, no path, just a steep drop and rushing water below. He turned his head, catching a glimpse of a figure stepping from the trees, a monstrous shape with obsidian skin and four gleaming eyes. It snarled when it saw him. Cade made the only choice he had. He jumped. They hit the water hard. It was cold and fast, sweeping them downriver through jagged rocks and twisted vines. Cade struggled to keep their heads above water, one arm clinging to the girl, the other trying to grab something stable. Finally, his fingers found a slick branch. He latched on and pulled them to the muddy bank. He collapsed, coughing, soaked to the bone. The girl was still unconscious, but alive. The small cube she had given him had vanished beneath his armor. Safe. Cade dragged her behind a wall of tree roots and waited, barely breathing. Minutes passed. No sounds of pursuit. Either they had lost the creatures, or they were being watched. The girl stirred. Her lips parted, forming shaky sounds in her native tongue. Cade leaned closer, trying to understand. She pointed to the cube again. He pulled it out and showed her the glowing card inside. Her eyes widened. She nodded slowly, then pressed her hand to her chest and whispered something with urgency. Cade didn't know the language, but the meaning was clear. That card mattered. It wasn't just technology, it was access to something big, maybe dangerous, maybe vital. He tucked it back inside his armor and nodded to her. Whatever this was, he'd protect it. She sat up slowly, her strength returning. The forest lit faintly around her skin, casting a violet glow in the shadowy undergrowth. Her kind were unlike anything Cade had seen in his tours. Beautiful, ethereal. She didn't belong in a place like this. Neither did he. They moved together now, slower, more cautious. Cade took point with his rifle raised, while the girl stayed behind him, limping but alert. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the trees grew taller and stranger, their trunks marked with glowing blue veins. Eventually, they reached a stone wall overgrown with moss, hidden in the green. An old gate, sealed shut with alien glyphs pulsing red. The girl stepped forward and touched the gate. Nothing happened. She looked back at Cade and gestured for the card. He hesitated, then handed it to her. She slid it into a groove at the center of the gate. The glyphs flickered, then glowed green. With a groan, the gate began to open. Inside was something Cade didn't expect. Clean floors, lit corridors. Technology that still worked. A secret facility carved into the earth, humming with forgotten energy. The girl gestured for him to follow. He looked back at the jungle one last time, then stepped through the doorway. The walls shimmered with light reactive surfaces, displaying alien scripts that shifted as they passed. The girl moved with more confidence now, leading him down a curved path to a chamber filled with floating data cores and humming crystal consoles. She approached one and placed her hand on it. The room reacted instantly, lights flaring to life. She turned to Cade and pointed to the largest terminal. He stepped closer. The console scanned him, then lit up with a symbol he couldn't read. The girl nodded again. She wanted him to activate it. Cade hesitated, then reached forward. As soon as his fingers touched the panel, the room responded with a burst of light and sound. Suddenly, the wall to his right shifted and slid open, revealing something frozen behind transparent glass. It was another chamber. Inside stood an exosuit. No, not just a suit. A weapon. Sleek, deadly, human-sized but clearly not made by humans. The card had unlocked it. Cade turned toward the girl. She was watching him with wide eyes, filled with something between fear and hope. She stepped forward and spoke again, slower this time. One word came through clearly. Yours. Cade stared at the weapon. His fingers curled into a fist. He didn't know what this meant yet, but it was clear something had changed the moment he helped her. Now he held a key to something greater, and he wasn't sure the galaxy was ready for what came next. The glass casing opened with a hiss, and the air inside the chamber felt colder, as if untouched for years. The exosuit stood tall and gleaming, covered in layers of black alloy and glowing veins of deep blue energy. It wasn't just armor, it pulsed. Alive, as if waiting. Cade stepped toward it with a growing sense of caution. the weight of the keycard burning against his chest through his armor. The alien girl stood at the terminal, watching him carefully. Her expression wasn't fear, but something harder to call. Read. She wasn't asking him to take it. She expected it. Whatever this suit was, she believed it belonged to him now. Cade raised his hand and pressed it against the surface of the suit's chestplate. The entire chamber responded. A shockwave of light exploded outward from the suit, scanning his body with intricate lasers. Data streamed through the air in alien code. The suit began to shift. Plates unlocked. Mechanical limbs spread open, revealing a space just wide enough for a human body. The girl stepped forward, her voice soft but clear. Chosen. Cade didn't know what that meant. He didn't feel chosen. He felt lost, alone, and far from everything he understood. But something in the air changed when she said it. The suit accepted him. It wasn't designed for humans, yet it opened perfectly for him. As if it had waited centuries for a Terran to arrive, he stepped into it. As soon as he did, the armor sealed around him, wrapping his limbs with eerie precision. No controls. No controls. The interface was neural. He could feel the machine's awareness touching his mind. It wasn't invasive, but it was there. Curious, listening. The moment he blinked, his vision sharpened tenfold. Everything around him became clearer. The alien girl's heartbeat pulsed in the air. The walls revealed their energy signatures. A hidden hallway behind the chamber lit up in his new display. Cade clenched his fists, and the suit responded with silent power. He felt stronger, faster, more than human. The girl stepped back and placed her hand on her chest again. She bowed her head once deeply. Cade opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the suit intercepted a signal. Hostile forces detected. The display marked 6 red targets approaching from the jungle at speed. They had been followed. Cade turned toward the exit. The suit responded instantly, its boots adjusting to his stride without sound. He moved with precision, each step fluid. A girl followed closely, her hand on the wall as lights guided their path. At the end of the corridor was a lift. She activated it with a swipe of her hand. The platform rose slowly toward the surface. The hum of the machine was drowned out by the growing sound of approaching beasts. Cade flexed his fingers. The suit hummed with anticipation. Targeting systems online. Pulse launchers charged. Whoever was coming wasn't ready for this. The lift stopped. The stone door above split open, revealing the thick canopy once more. Sunlight pierced through the branches. Cade stepped out first. The suit adapted to the terrain, scanning everything around him. The moment they emerged, the attackers revealed themselves. 6 massive creatures, the same species that had hunted them before, burst from the shadows. Tall, armored, and snarling, they surrounded the clearing. But this time, Cade didn't run. He raised his arm, and the suit responded with a pulse of energy that rippled across the clearing. The creatures hesitated. They had never seen a human like this. The first one lunged. Cade sidestepped effortlessly, his vision slowing the world for a split second. He countered with a strike to the beast's chest. The impact launched it back into the trees. The others charged. Cade moved through them like wind, each movement precise. He didn't kill, but he didn't hesitate. The suit worked with him, reading threats before they landed. Within seconds, the beasts were scattered, groaning on the ground or retreating into the jungle. The last one tried to flee. Cade let it go. He turned back to the girl. She stared at him as if seeing him for the first time, not as a rescuer, not even as a man, but as something else. A warrior wearing what only legend said could be worn by the lost bloodline of her people. And now, a human wore it. She walked forward and touched the chestplate gently. Then she looked up at him and said a single word. Awakened. The jungle was quiet again, but this time it wasn't empty. Cade looked toward the horizon. there was something more waiting. The suit had opened a path not just of survival, but of purpose. And whatever that keycard had truly unlocked, this was only the beginning. The sun dipped low over the canopy, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Cade and the alien girl moved in silence, the jungle around them unusually still. The suit had integrated itself into his movements, its armor humming softly as it adjusted to his surroundings. He didn't feel like a man anymore, he felt like a living weapon. But the girl never treated him like one. She walked beside him, limping slightly, her hand occasionally brushing against moss-covered trees that responded with dim pulses of light. The jungle was alive in ways Cade still couldn't understand. But the suit translated some of the glyphs etched into tree trunks and rocks. This place had been a sanctuary once. Now it was forgotten, buried beneath war and ash. After hours of moving through narrow paths and ancient roots, the girl finally stopped. Before them stood a colossal structure grown into the side of a cliff. It wasn't metal. It was living wood, shaped and bent over centuries. A temple, overgrown but not ruined. The air shimmered near its entrance as if something inside still breathed. Cade's visor marked it as active. Power levels deep inside. Defense systems offline. As they stepped through the archway, vines pulled aside and glowing blue lights flickered to life along the walls. The inside of the temple was vast and quiet. Carvings ran along the walls, depicting her people in battle, in peace, in flight. The girl knelt at one of the carvings. She touched the figure of a tall being surrounded by swirling light. Cade stepped closer, and the suit's HUD highlighted the inscription. The translation was imperfect, but two words stood out clearly: Keybearer and Return. She rose to her feet and walked deeper into the temple. Cade followed, his hand resting on the side of the suit's frame. As they descended a spiral path, the air grew warmer. At the bottom, they reached a large chamber with a circular platform in its center. Above it hung a sphere of light, spinning. Slowly, the girl gestured to the platform. Cade stepped onto it. The moment he did, the platform activated. Lines of energy shot from the edges to his feet. The suit locked into place, holding him still. The sphere above expanded, and suddenly the room was filled with images. Projections of stars, planets, battles long past. Cade was at the center of it all. He saw visions of her world, once advanced, beautiful, and peaceful. Then came the invasion. Not by humans, but something worse, something ancient. Machines that consumed systems. Her people had hidden their secrets, their weapons, their last hope. And they left one rule behind. Only someone not of their blood could awaken the final defense. Cade understood now. The suit wasn't just armor. It was a signal, a call to something greater. The keycard she gave him was a test, and he had passed. The girl stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. The projections vanished. Silence returned. She pointed to the far end of the chamber, where another door stood sealed. Cade approached and held the card to it. The door clicked open. Inside was a chamber filled with rows of stasis pods, hundreds, maybe thousands, each containing one of her kind, sleeping, preserved, waiting. The girl stepped forward and placed her hand on the nearest pod. It lit up gently, reacting to her touch. She turned to Cade, her eyes shining brighter than ever. She spoke softly, and though he didn't understand every word, the meaning struck him. They sleep because we failed. You woke the last guardian. You are not like the others. You will decide. Cade looked at the rows of her people, frozen in time. He didn't want to be a savior. He wasn't ready to decide anything. But something deep inside told him he had to try. He stepped forward, placed his hand on the console, and felt the system respond. The pods flickered with light. Not waking, not yet, but listening, waiting for the command. He turned back to the girl, Her eyes met his. In them he saw both sorrow and hope. She had carried her people's burden for so long, and now she had handed it to him. He nodded once. She smiled gently. The temple hummed again. The air shifted. The forest above rustled with the sound of wind that hadn't touched the trees in years. The old systems were coming alive. And something else was watching. As they left the chamber, the suit picked up new signals. Not just movement. Signals. Communications. Someone else had noticed the temple had awakened. Satellites in orbit. Ships adjusting course. They weren't alone anymore. Cade walked through the temple gates with the alien girl at his side. He wasn't just a lost soldier anymore. He had stepped into a story older than his species. And now, with every step, he walked closer to a decision that would reshape the stars. The air above the temple had changed. It carried weight now, a thickness like the moment before a storm. Cade's visor detected multiple orbital scans. Someone in space had picked up the temple's reactivation. The suit's internal systems began displaying warnings in red. An inbound vessel, no insignia, no known transponder, fast, armed. The alien girl stood beside him beneath the open sky, her gaze fixed upward. She didn't need a translator to know something was coming. The trees around them rustled with unease. Even the wildlife had vanished. Cade took a step forward, his boots pressing into ancient stone. His grip tightened around the pulse rifle integrated into the suit's right arm. "We can't stay here," he muttered, more to himself than her. She nodded anyway. They moved quickly down the mountain trail, back through the overgrown jungle. Path. The temple had done what it was meant to do, send a signal. But that signal had awakened more than sleeping memories. Somewhere out there, something had been waiting for this key to turn. As they reached a clearing below the tree line, the girl suddenly stopped. Her hand rose to point toward the sky. Cade followed her gaze. A sharp flash appeared among the clouds. Then came the sound, a low, howling roar. A ship broke through the atmosphere, its hull glowing from descent. It wasn't large, but it was built for speed and destruction. The suit marked it hostile immediately, weapons online, plasma vents ready. It was searching for a heat signature. The temple's activation had led it here. Cade pushed the girl behind a thick root wall and crouched low. The ship hovered overhead for several seconds before releasing a scanning pulse across the terrain. It passed through trees, soil, and stone. Cade felt it vibrate inside his suit. The systems absorbed it, redirected it, cloaking engaged. The ship didn't see them, not yet. But it wouldn't take long. He tapped the girl's shoulder and motioned for them to move. They sprinted toward a narrow crevice hidden behind a fallen tree. On the other side lay an old transport pad buried under moss and vines. Cade knelt beside it, brushing away debris. The platform blinked weakly to life. Ancient tech. Still holding charge, the girl pressed her hand to its surface. A destination flashed in alien script. Cade read the translation. Skyforge Site Delta. He had no idea what that meant. But it was better than waiting here to be bombed from orbit. He nodded. She adjusted the coordinates. The pad hummed louder. The energy built fast. The trees behind them burst into fire as the enemy ship launched a probing missile into the clearing. The shockwave sent soil flying. Cade shielded her with his body as the pad flared to full power. They vanished in a flash of blue light, reappearing in darkness. The new location was cold, metallic, and quiet. Underground. Cade's visor adjusted. They stood in a sealed corridor, made of reinforced steel and alien crystal. The walls pulsed faintly, responding to the presence of the suit. The girl staggered for a moment, catching her breath. He reached out to steady her. She looked up and whispered one word. Safe, for now maybe. But this place wasn't abandoned. As they moved deeper into the corridor, lights snapped on. Machines came to life. doors opened automatically. The facility welcomed Cade like it knew him. The symbols etched along the walls bore the same glowing markings as the suit. His presence was unlocking paths sealed for centuries. At the end of the corridor, a massive hangar opened before them. In the center stood a ship. Sleek, silver, and organic in design. Unlike human craft. Unlike any he had seen in combat. This was no transport. It was a command vessel. A relic meant for one pilot. A pilot wearing the armor. The girl approached. The ship, her footsteps slow. Her fingers trailed across the hull. The ship responded with a soft hum. She turned to Cade and spoke, this time slower. The suit translated enough to make sense. This was our final chance. Meant for the one who would rise from the ashes. One who is not of us, yet walks with us. Cade looked at the ship. It was not a weapon of war. It was a key. A mobile gateway to something greater. Maybe a network. Maybe a fleet. Maybe a history lost to time. But whatever it was, the galaxy was about to know it still lived. Before he could move, the suit flared again. Another alert. Multiple ships now entering the system. Enemy tags confirmed. They weren't alone in orbit anymore. Whoever had followed them wasn't giving up. And they weren't coming to negotiate. The girl stepped close, her voice firm now. The fear was gone, replaced by duty, by trust. She placed her hand on his chest plate. The suit recognized her touch. It unlocked the final interface. A seat lowered from the ship's hull. Lights extended like wings across the hangar. It only flies for you, she said. Cade climbed into the ship. As the cockpit sealed around him, the controls fused with his suit. The ship woke with a heartbeat of its own. Systems online. Weapons locked. Shields full. For the first time, he felt the scale of what he'd stepped into. He wasn't just the keybearer. He was now the last pilot of a sleeping empire. Asterisk. The cockpit sealed with a hiss, and the ship pulsed around Cade like a living creature awakening from hibernation. Lights flickered in sequence, forming controls that responded not to touch but to thought. His connection with the suit extended into the vessel itself. It felt like slipping into a second skin, one that knew where he wanted to go before he spoke a word. The alien girl watched from the hangar floor, her hand resting on the side of the ship as if offering silent reassurance. Her eyes held no fear, only steady confidence. She believed in him more than he believed in himself. Cade gave her a nod through the transparent dome of the cockpit. She stepped back as the engines flared to life. The vessel lifted smoothly from the platform, the hangar doors splitting open to reveal a rising shaft that led straight into the dark sky. In seconds, Cade was airborne. The craft pierced through stone and metal, then shot up into the clouds above. Sensors lit up immediately. Enemy ships, 3 small interceptors, and a larger command frigate were closing in fast. The ship reacted instantly. It adjusted trajectory, activated stealth plating, and launched chaff before Cade even processed the incoming threat. He leaned back and let the vessel guide itself, his role not as pilot but as a partner. It responded to his thoughts, blending his instincts with its programming. Together, they became something new. The lead interceptor fired first. Twin plasma bolts sliced through the clouds. Cade rolled the ship hard, dodging between the blasts with fluid grace. A targeting reticle formed in his visor. With a single mental command, the ship released 2 pulse rounds. The interceptor exploded in a bright flash, scattering debris across the sky. The second and third ships split up, circling to flank him. The frigate began charging a heavy weapon, its energy core glowing red. Cade narrowed his eyes and dove downward, spiraling through the dense cloud layer. The ship folded its wings and streamlined itself, diving faster than gravity allowed. The other vessels chased, unable to keep up. Cade skimmed the treetops, then pulled upward, slingshotting around a tall cliff and rising behind his pursuers. The suit adjusted for G-force. The ship opened its ventral ports and fired a shockwave burst. One of the interceptors lost control and spiraled into the jungle. The last one veered away and retreated toward the frigate. Cade followed, the enemy. Command ship turned to flee, but he was faster. A message blinked on his HUD. The girl had activated the temple's defense grid. He could route power from it remotely. With one mental nod, he sent the signal. The ship's underbelly glowed. Beams of energy burst from the jungle below, locking. Onto the frigate, Cade fired the final volley. A stream of white-hot plasma lanced forward, cutting through the command ship's core. It exploded in a silent bloom, its wreckage falling harmlessly over uninhabited terrain. Silence returned to the sky. He exhaled slowly. The battle was over. For now, he turned the ship back toward the hidden temple. As he landed softly in the hangar, the alien girl was already there, waiting. She stepped forward, her face unreadable. When the cockpit opened, she didn't speak. She simply placed her hand on the hull and closed her eyes. The lights in the chamber dimmed around them. The ship had returned home. Cade stepped down from the vessel. His legs felt heavy, but his mind was sharper than ever. He had seen what the ship could do. He had seen how quickly the enemy responded to its activation. There was no hiding anymore. The galaxy would come for it, for him. For her, she finally spoke, her voice low. They feared us long before you arrived. Now they will fear you too. Cade didn't answer. He didn't need to. He walked with her down the corridor, passing ancient walls now fully lit. More of her people's history revealed itself in the glowing murals. A time of peace shattered by war. A last hope buried until a foreigner, a human, would be accepted. By a weapon that refused all others. They reached a chamber that hadn't opened before. The suit responded to his presence and unlocked the door. Inside was a beacon, tall, crystalline, and still dormant. The girl pointed to it. The suit translated her words. Signal them. The others, the scattered. Let them know the bloodline still burns. Let them know the last pilot lives. Cade stepped forward. The beacon reacted to him. A pulse of light formed at the base and traveled upward. The signal wasn't for the enemy. It was for her people, the survivors. The ones who had gone dark. It was a call to rise. The pulse burst from the temple roof like a flare. Across the stars, dormant relays woke. Ancient satellites turned their eyes to the system. In distant places, ships long forgotten lit up again. The fire had returned. The key had turned. The last empire had stirred from sleep. Cade turned back toward the girl. She reached up and touched his helmet gently. Her voice was quiet. You've done what no one else could. You became one of us without asking to. And now you lead. He didn't feel like a leader. He felt like a soldier. But something had begun. A movement that couldn't be undone. And as the stars above shifted in response, Cade understood one truth more than ever. He wasn't just wearing the suit anymore. He had become it. Asterisk. The signal soared through space like a ripple in calm water, striking long-forgotten satellites, abandoned temples, and deep sleep colonies. Lights flickered on across dead systems. Ships hidden for generations reactivated. Some carried sleeping warriors. Some held records of a civilization nearly erased. Others waited for a command they had not heard in 1,000 years. Now they heard it. Cade stood at the beacon's base, the glow surrounding him like a second sun. His visor was filled with real-time data. Responses were coming from multiple directions, some faint, some strong, all of them ancient. The alien girl stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the golden pulse in the room. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. But her hand trembled slightly as it reached out to touch the beacon. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, the transmissions changed. The messages became clearer. Names spoken in her language, coordinates, symbols of loyalty. It was not just Cad who had called them, it was her. The last daughter of a forgotten house. The one who survived long enough to believe again. He turned to her. How many will come? She looked at him and answered without hesitation. Enough to stand. Enough to fight. The temple systems began reconfiguring themselves. Holograms appeared in mirror maps of star systems, fleet positions, hidden caches of tech and history. Cade could see it now. The outline of a network that had once rivaled empires. The survivors hadn't forgotten. They had only hidden long. Enough to wait for the right moment. He had become that moment. As the information scrolled across his visor, a new alert triggered. A transmission, encrypted, military grade, not alien, human. Earth Command had picked up the same pulse. A voice crackled through static, surprised and uncertain. Unidentified vessel. We detected a high-energy surge from your location. Are you in distress? Identify yourself. Cade paused. The suit's comms sensed instantly. He could speak to them. The girl looked at him, sensing the hesitation. He took a breath and replied, "This is Private Cade Mercer of the 9th Recon. I'm alive. And I found something buried under the stars. Something we were never meant to awaken alone." There was a long silence on the other end. Then the voice returned. "Mercer, say again. Are you requesting extraction?" Cade looked around at the temple walls, the glowing ships, the woman beside him. No, he wasn't asking to be pulled out. He was becoming part of something larger than the war Earth was fighting. This was a second front, one that began long before humanity launched its first satellite. "I'm not requesting extraction. I'm requesting recognition. Tell Command we're not the only ones out here. Tell them the stars remember." He cut the line. The girl led him to another chamber. Inside was a council table, half broken, half lit. As they approached, the room, lit in full, seats appeared, not just for the alien kind. The ship, the armor, and now the facility had adjusted everything for him. A hybrid throne room and war table for two species meant to meet, but never did. Others would arrive soon. The suit displayed estimated arrival times, ships from different regions. Not warships, not yet. Scouts, elders, messengers. They had waited generations to answer the signal. Some would be cautious, others desperate. All would come with questions. And they would look to the one in the armor. Cade had to become more than a survivor. The alien girl sat in the chair beside him. Her posture was regal, shoulders squared, back straight. Her voice was steady. "We will not beg. We will not kneel. We offer alliance. Not chains. But they must see you first. They trust the suit. But they'll follow the man inside it." Cade didn't speak. He sat in the chair, letting the moment settle. Then he pressed his hand to the console in front of him. The room responded. A new beacon ignited this one local. For those who had arrived and hidden among the broken colonies. A meeting point. A council that had not sat in centuries would rise again. Outside, the skies began to change. The first ships appeared in the upper atmosphere. Some were damaged, others pristine. Each carried a story. Each carried a question. Who awakened the temple? Who wore the suit? And what would he demand in return? Cade stood as the temple doors opened. He walked slowly toward the edge of the platform. The alien girl walked beside him. For a moment, the sun broke through the clouds, casting light over the jungle below. The people would see their long-lost guardian returned. But he would not stand alone. He looked out into the sky and whispered only one thought. "Let them come." The jungle around the temple buzzed with tension. Ships hung in the sky like waiting beasts. Their shapes unfamiliar but elegant, ancient but not broken. Some bore the long-forgotten sigils of noble houses. Others were blank, as if ashamed of the banners they once flew. One by one, they landed. On the outer platforms, their passengers stepping onto ground that hadn't felt life in generations. Cade stood at the top of the stone staircase with the alien girl beside him. The suit's systems tracked every movement, every breath, every signal from the incoming delegates. None came armed. Not visibly, but they didn't need weapons. Each of them was dangerous in their own way. Survivors always were. The girl walked forward first. The temple accepted her presence like a long-lost daughter. The gathered emissaries whispered her name in their native tongue. Some bowed their heads. Others narrowed their eyes. Her family had once held great power and great blame. They didn't know if she had come to reclaim or redeem. Then they saw him. Cade stepped into the light, the suit gleaming with the temple's reflection. The air shifted. Conversations halted. Even those who had doubted stood still. No outsider had ever touched the relic armor and lived. None had walked into the heart of the temple and awakened its systems. Yet here he stood, not just wearing it, but commanding it. The girl raised her voice. Her words flowed through the chamber, translated by the suit into every dialect present. She spoke of the past, of what had been lost, of how they had scattered, like ash in the wind. Then she spoke of Cade, not as a savior, but as proof that trust could be reborn, that the relics had waited for someone worthy, even if he came from a world they had once ignored. Cade stepped forward. His voice was calm, measured. He spoke as a soldier, not a king. He told them he didn't come to rule. He didn't come to own their past. He came because someone gave him a key when she had nothing else left. And he opened the door not for himself, but for those who needed to step through it. The silence that followed was heavy. Then one of the delegates stepped forward. A tall being with silver skin and dark eyes. His voice was deep and slow. Do you understand what you've done, human? You carry the weight of all our dead. You wear the last crown forged before the fall. Do you accept this burden? Cade didn't hesitate. I didn't choose it, but I won't turn from it. If I must carry the weight, I will do it walking forward. The silver-skinned delegate lowered his head. So be it. More stepped forward. Each offered something. One pledged a ship. Another offered records from a lost archive. A third promised warriors. They didn't kneel, they didn't cheer, but they stood with him. And in this place, that meant more than a crown. By nightfall, the temple had become something new, a command center, a diplomatic seat, a war table. Cade stood in the central chamber, the girl beside him overseeing a dozen live feeds across forgotten sectors. Word had spread. Some of the enemy factions that once hunted her kind had already begun moving. They sensed the shift. The old empire was breathing again. Cade knew war would come, not tomorrow. Not next week, but soon. What mattered now was preparing for it. He sent orders through the temple's restored network. Ships were to be repaired, stations reactivated. The scattered children of the stars were returning home. And this time, they would not scatter again. He walked through the corridors late into the night. The alien girl followed, never far behind. She had become more than a guide. She had become a partner. Where he stood as proof, she stood as purpose. Where he brought strength, she brought trust. They paused in the ancient garden outside the beacon chamber. The vines glowed softly, and above them the stars shimmered brighter than before. She turned to him, her voice quiet. Do you regret it? Helping me in the forest that day? Cade looked at her for a long moment. No, that moment saved more than you. It reminded me who I am. She smiled, just once, and looked up at the sky. The galaxy doesn't know it yet. But it just changed. And it began with a human who offered kindness without asking for anything back. The suit's systems registered no threats. No alarms. Only a single message pulsing through the network. Awakened, united, ready. And in the quiet that followed, Under alien stars and ancient stone, the Forgotten found their leader, not a king, a soldier who said yes when he didn't have to.